Well, folks, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make streetcar track. This was requested by Adam Dennis, and I've been trying to get good streetcar track, and I think I finally perfected it with this section right here. So I thought I'd show you guys how to do it. So here are most of your supplies. We've got an X-Acto knife, masking tape, a glue gun. Make sure it's a high temp one. I'll get into that later. A little set of wheels. Just make sure you actually have two sets of wheels, not just one, because if you have one, it can curve, and we're going to be using this to do a bit of gauging. A tie, railroad tie with the spikes cut off, and some hot glue. So that's the majority of the stuff for just putting down the rails, and then later we've got plaster and paint and whatnot else. But we'll get to that as it does. So we'll load up our glue gun here. So the first thing you want to do, I've already done this step, is to obviously put down your rails. Once you do put down your rails, to measure them, you take your tie and you shove that on the upside right under the rails. And what you want to do is you want to position it so that each rail is sitting where it would if this was a regular piece of track. And this way you know that you're getting your rails exactly where they should be. Second, you want to hold them and take your rail device, make sure it rolls okay, wiggle it a little to make sure it doesn't fall off. And if it doesn't, what you do is you take your high temp glue gun and you put hot glue directly under the rails, not on the sides. You obviously don't want it there. Just fire it right under the rails. And you let it set. I usually just do a test to make sure it's not interfering at all. And you just wait for that to set. Once the hot glue sets on the rail, you want to do it on the other rail, and make sure your tie is still where you want it. And then once again, we run our rail device on the actual rail, and as you can see, it rolls freely. If there's hesitation, it could be too tight. And again, wiggle it to make sure it doesn't fall off, because it might be able to stay on the rails at one spot, but in another it might not be. So hold it there, and just as before, fire some of the hot glue directly under the rail. Do it also from the sides, because if you do it from the outside, you don't run as much of a risk of getting it up here where the flanges need to go. So that's what I do, and I find it's a pretty effective method at making sure your tracks engage and the hot glue doesn't interfere with operations. Once the rails have set on both sides, what you want to do is you want to take your tie and you want to push it up a distance, not too far, but just far enough that you can basically continue adding hot glue under the rails. Find a spot here. Whoops. And there we go. That seems like a fine spot. So kind of like an inch per time. And you want to take your cart or a bogey or whatever you're testing it with and just roll it over. And just as before, put hot glue. In this case, I'm going to put it under both sides because now that we have a little bit secure, you don't have to be quite as careful as you do when you're very first starting off. You have to make sure it's right on point, but once you've got it, it will start to kind of guide where the rails go. So just as long as you make minor adjustments, you won't have any problems here. And basically just keep continuing the process. Another strategy you can also do if the hot glue is not high temp or you just want it to bond a bit better, you can sand the bottom of the rails with like 40 grit sandpaper, and it will just make the bottom of the rails a little bit rougher so that the hot glue has something to grab onto. Once you have your desired piece of rail glued down, you can remove your tie. In this case, in the future, I'm going to keep expanding this, but first I need to remove the foam road. So at the moment, I'm just going to pull that out and begin putting down our pavement. Before paving the area, you want to prep your area with masking tape. And for the really precise pieces, you can just take your X-Acto knife, cut it. And And this will just guarantee it turns out completely straight. There we go. And we'll obviously do that on both sides. Once you have your space all prepared, we can start putting down the equivalent to the asphalt. This is drywall, and it's wonderful for making model roads because you can sand it, you can adjust it, it goes on very easily. The kind I happen to be using is Dried X. It doesn't really matter as far as I'm concerned. I have to say though, I like this kind because you can see it's pink. But it's only pink while it's in a liquid state. Once it dries, it will actually change color and turn more white. So I find it's good because it will let you know if it's ready to be painted over or if it needs more time to dry. And obviously you want to get this as smooth as possible by just spreading it out, but don't worry if it's not perfect the first time because we're going to sand this later, and once we sand it, it's going to take out all the lumps and it will give it a very, very even look. So you just want to get it as good as possible, but again, imperfection is completely okay. Once you get your plaster to a point you're satisfied with, it's now time to pull up the tape. Now, I would do this when it was completely set, but the problem is that if you do it when it's set, my guess would be that it would crack a lot, so I just pull it up while it's still wet. It doesn't come up perfectly, but it's a lot better than it cracking. And we're going to clean this up afterwards in the sanding process, so the rough edges are not here to stay. Well, that one actually came up pretty clean, but we'll correct all this. Okay, so it's now 12 hours later. As you can see, the stuff's turned completely from pink to white, which means it's ready to go. So we're gonna take some sandpaper. In this case, we're using 150 grit, which should do this pretty well. By the way, sorry if my voice sounds a bit muffled. I've got a what's it called, an air respirator? One of those things that keeps the dusting crap out of my lungs. Anyways, so we'll just start sanding out all the rough spots so we have it the way we want it. Camera right down here, that way you can really see the sanding process. Vacuum up your area to make sure that there's not anything you can't see, because sometimes after you vacuum you notice little details that you'd like to sand down. And anyways, I can now see a few little things that we need to correct. So I'll show you how to do that. The way I've laid this, it's kind of hard to tell, but this bit has been lowered to a point where it won't affect the rails. We can see right in this region, part of it came up so high that it is now going to impede the flanges. So what we're going to do is just take an X-Acto knife, and we're just going to kind of score away the area that's going to get in the way of the flanges. Like so. And then we'll take our vacuum. Get that little, I think that's actually a piece of the hot glue there. And take our little rail runner, wherever it is. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the exact one, but I've got another one which will do the same task. And as you can see, it has no issues, which means we did it right. You guys remember I said I was going to clean up the edges, so to do that we're going to take something that's nice and straight and get it where we want it, and then we're going to take an X-Acto knife and shave off the edge. Clean up what's left of the excess edges. Bonded to the layout. And as you can see, those edges are looking not too shabby. And once you've got everything to your satisfaction, you can just throw a bit of paint on there. Doesn't matter, by the way, if you get this stuff on the rails. And once you've got your paint down and it's somewhat dry, you can clean the track off. In this case, I'm using a piece of cork, which, as it turns out, seems to be pretty effective at taking this off. And since the rails are higher than the road, it really makes it quite easy just to gently scrape the paint off top of the rails. You can leave it on the sides, in my opinion, because it will actually make it look like the rails are level with the road, like they are in real life. But the road being set lower helps with a lot of things. First of all, you'll have less problems with the flanges, and also for cleaning. I find it's a lot better. It's a little bit less realistic, but generally from a distance, you can't tell. As far as I can tell, looking at the camera, it doesn't even really look like the rails are that much higher. Well, folks, I hope this helped anybody who's trying to do this bit themselves. I'd say it's definitely not inconceivable that there's a better way to do this, but hey, there's some people who wanted to see how I got this bit done, and yeah, I'm happy with the results, so I thought I'd share them with you guys. Anyways, to end off the video, I thought, what's a better way than to run the Main Street Skedaddler right across the line. Thanks for watching, everyone.